Hey guys, it's Chrissy here at Queen City Clay again. So in the last video that I did, I promised you a darting video on the cylinders that we had made. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. So I've got the cylinder that we've already made. It's, I wouldn't even say leather hard. It's a very soft leather hard, so it's still really wiggly. And that's important. I can still feel the moisture in the clay. It's still moving, but it's not so soft that like if I touch it, it's gonna completely fall over and lose its shape. You know, so it's kind of just at the point of kind of setting up. So I'm gonna put 4 darts in this. And by darts, I mean, I'm gonna cut some clay out of the bottom of it and then fold that in till it meets, and it's gonna create an angle, okay? So this is gonna be my bottom. I'm actually looking at the bottom and the top is down on the table. So the first thing I need to do is create my dart. And because I need all these darts to match, I'm gonna cut out a little template for my dart. And that's just gonna be a triangle. So I've got this paper folded in half so that my triangle will be symmetrical. And I will just cut it out. So the size and shape of your triangle is going to mean a lot for your dart or for how your final form ends up. If this triangle were wider and shorter, this will fold in more. The taller and thinner it is, the more gradual your angle will be. So that's just something for you to play around with, cutting out different kinds of darts. And I might do a video in the future for you guys where I just cut out a whole bunch of darts and show you what all those different ones do. But this is just a technique, so you guys can play around with that on your own. So if we use this dart, then I know we'll pretend this is the bottom, that my angle is going to start this far up on the cup. And I'm going to lose this much clay 4 times because I'm going to cut out 4 darts. You don't have to do 4. You can do 3. You can do 2 if it's a wide enough thing, and then make 2 feet on there. So I want to quickly, and I'm going to start at the seam. It's a good point for me to start. Just see if I take out 1, 2, 3, 4 lengths of this dart, I end up over here. So it's from here to here. It's a little less than half. So this is going to become a little less than half of what it already is. And if you get to that point where it's more than half, it's going to get tippy. So you might want to think about cutting your dart down a little bit, okay? So here's what I'm going to do. I need to make some marks in the top of this cylinder as reference points for where my dart's going to go. I used to kind of put them maybe a 1/4 turn from that seam, so the seam would be right in the middle. But I'm liking that less and less. I think what I'm going to do is start this one pretty near the seam. You know, maybe I'll kind of tuck it in here, kind of close to my seam. And this is, again, something to play with. And I'm going to just make a mark at the center of that dart. So because I folded my paper, I now have a center line on this triangle. So I know where the center of my dart is. So I can line up my tool with the center line and make a mark in the top of my cylinder, okay? So if I was doing a commission or something and I was making sets of these, I would measure around my cylinder, divide it in quarters, and measure exactly where each little mark goes. But for a one-off, I'm just gonna take a straight long tool. It might be a knife blade, one of those long metal rulers, whatever you've got sitting around. And I'm going to kind of bisect this in half this way. So I'm making a mark here and a mark here. And then I'm going to give this a turn and go across. So I've made marks this way, and then I'm going to make marks this way. Okay? Of course, if you're doing thirds or something, you're going to want to divide it in 3. Put 3 marks instead of 4, or 6, or 8, or whatever you want to do. All right, so I've got these 4 marks here. That's where my darts are going to line up. All right, so if your dart isn't, if your clay is really kind of dry, and your dart doesn't stick readily to the clay if it's coming off, you might get your dart just a little bit wet so it sticks down to the clay. It's really hard to hold it on and cut it at the same time. So I talk a lot about using tar paper or heavier material for your templates so they'll last forever. Not for my darts. I just use like computer paper for that because I need it to be thin enough to stick to my clay. Now I have experimented with putting like Johnson's paste wax or some kind of oil on them to help them live longer, and that does work. So I'm cutting out, and as I cut out, I'm angling my knife in a little bit. And I'm angling it in on both sides. And most people, when they dart, they'll kind of cut one way and then they will mimic that angle on the other side, which is probably the right way to do it. What I do, though, by creating this bevel where both these planes are facing that V direction, is when this folds in, it folds in a little bit more, and I get some extra clay on the inside that I then use as a coil to kind of smooth out. All right? Kind of whatever works for you, but I kind of like to do it that way. So I'm gonna come and cut the dart that's across from the one I just cut. Again, lining up that center line of my template on my mark. A little bit of an angle in there. This is a fairly large dart for this size cylinder. It will be dramatic. There won't be any subtlety about what happened. All right, get this marked up. We're almost there. And the fourth one. Just getting that center line marked exactly with this little mark I've put in the top. And once you've cut one or two out, when I put this in the middle, I can see if I've got about the same amount of clay over here as I have over here. And if not, I can adjust accordingly. That's why I kind of go 1, 2 across from each other, because then when I go 3 and 4, I can adjust a little bit and tweak things as needed. Okay, get that cut out. Okay, so you got like a Burger King crown or something, right? That's what it should look like. So I'm going to score everybody, and I like this scoring rib that has these really fine teeth on it. Just does a really good job of getting everything scored up and keeping the clay even, not getting kind of those bumps you sometimes get if you're using a scoring tool that has bigger teeth to it or tines of a fork or something like that. It's delicate, but it's also tears up a lot of surface. All right, so we've scored everybody. Let's get everybody wet. We're just adding a little bit of water with a paintbrush. Not too much water. You don't want it dripping down the sides. If it does, move your piece out of that puddle so it doesn't get soggy and you ruin your edge. Okay, and now I'm going to score kind of across the clay, making that connection point a little bit broader. And the other thing, see this gunk that ends up on your tool? A great thing to do with that is put it right on the edges of these pieces you've scored. So you're adding a little extra clay back into that edge, because if you're going to get a crack or a point where it wants to separate, it's going to start at that corner. So having that little bit of extra clay in there can be really helpful. And it requires like no extra work. You just take that sludge and pop it right there and it's like ready to go. Pre-built-in coil. All right. So you're going to want to start from the bottom and move up, but don't do that. This bottom here is going to be what sits on the table. So that has to line up correctly. So I want to get these corners lined up first. Okay. And then you'll work your way down the bottom. So I'll kind of line up that corner. I've got a thumb or a finger on the inside, and I've got my fingers, and I'm just kind of gently pushing, applying a little bit of pressure inward with my thumb underneath for support. Okay, and you're just gonna kind of rough seam everything together like that. So get that edge lined up first, get something down in there for support, just kind of coax this clay towards itself. Just a gentle pressure. Get my corner lined up. Push that clay in towards the other side. Same thing over here. That corner, and then start from that corner, move down towards the point. Okay, so see how tiny that bottom got? real quick. See my angle there? So I've gone from something completely round to something that is round on the top and square on the bottom. Totally changed that form. All right. So again, you got to get something down inside, and maybe it's a paintbrush stick, maybe it's your finger, whatever works. And now I'm going to take a rib and kind of come on one side of the seam and then the other side of the seam and do a little back and forth that way. Maybe a little bit in, you know, kind of multiple directions are good. And if it's not really coming together beautifully, if you're having trouble, go back to your scoring rib, score that seam shut, kind of displace that clay, and it'll become more like one piece than two pieces sitting on top of each other. And then you can come back with your soft rib and clean that up. Okay, you don't want to see any cracks. And you also don't want to see any cracks down in this edge here. All right, so that's sealed up. And also on the inside, I want to seal it up. So I'm just taking my finger, I'm feeling along that seam, and I'm just kind of just giving it a gentle push. So I'm supporting on the outside and just kind of gently pushing in there. And I can feel that extra bead of clay that I created by angling my joint incorrectly. And that's kind of smoothing out in that corner. Okay, so we'll do the same thing over here, and we'll just go all the way around. So I'll do that super quick for you guys, so you don't have to watch me rib forever. And you notice I'm always cleaning off my tool. I take all these little scraps and I try to keep them in one pile, so that way if I do need a little coil, say this edge is cracking, I can quickly grab a little bit of that slop, make a little coil, wrap it around that edge, and smooth it in, and then that'll get rid of any separation that's happening there in the corner. All right, cleaning it up. Keeping my slop together so it stays wet if I need it. And smoothing on the inside. Always supporting on the outside when I'm working on the inside, and supporting on the inside when I'm working on the outside, right? Come in here, I want to be aware that I've got that seam there and not ruin that. Get all my slop together. Smooth out my inside. Okay, and now I want to square this up a little bit. So because I didn't measure, like this side is a little bit shorter than this side. Hopefully you guys can kind of see that difference. So I can kind of cheat it, fake it. You know, maybe I'll kind of stretch this a little bit on that side. Maybe push these together a little bit further so this side doesn't seem as long, and just make it appear to be a square, even if it's not a square, right? Kind of fake it a little bit until it looks more square. All right, so at this point, there's nothing else I can do. I'm gonna have to wait until this dries up to leather hard, when it doesn't wiggle at all anymore. It's completely holding its shape. And then I'll show you guys how to drop the bottom in from the top. Okay, so we'll come back to that in just a little bit.